Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections podcast. Today I'm joined by Harriet Hancock. Harriet is a senior leader in the immigration and justice world and has done work for a variety of different organisations in that space. But she's also a busy mum, and the reason I've got her on here today is because she's a speaker and a coach. We met through One Thought, and we've just had a really interesting couple of years of getting to know each other, chatting about bits and pieces in the margins and seeing what shows up. So I just thought she'd be a wonderful person to bring on as a guest today. So Harriet, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's lovely to be here. And it's a privilege because I love this podcast. It's been really fun to watch it since its inception and listen and hear and learn. And it's amazing to be on it.
Well, you're very welcome. You were very nearly my first guest. So it's lovely that we've eventually managed to make that work. And no, thank you very much indeed for sparing some time to join me today. I know that, like everybody, I suppose, in the world, really, we're all constantly learning and growing. But I know that that's something that's really been true for you in the last year or two. There's been things that have been popping up, and there's, you've always been a bubbly, outgoing kind of person and fun to talk to, but there's been a definite shift in energy that I'm feeling from how you're coming across these days. And I just wondered if there's anything that's really lighting you up at the moment that you're really excited about that we can chat about this morning.
That is such a cool question. There's so much we could talk about there. That's a very cool question. And the first bit of that question that I love is, I know that you've always been outgoing and bubbly, and that's not true. I had a incredibly painfully shy period all through my teens and into my 20s where I don't think anyone called me outgoing and bubbly. And it's really interesting to now generally be known as outgoing and bubbly. And what's shifted there over years, and it feels like it's building momentum. I think what you've noticed in me is the momentum building is the ability to see through my thinking. Mm-hmm. And that thinking that I used to be trapped in of, in conversation as someone in my early 20s, I couldn't talk because of and I couldn't listen either, because of the amount of thinking that looked real and present and needing attention around, I don't know what I should be saying. And that thought gathering force and dominating meant that I just couldn't communicate at all. And that over time, in countless spaces, affected my relationships, affected my career, it just affected the whole of my way of being in the world and my ability to access all the fun that's in the world, all of the adventure and the interest. And that has been shifting big time. And the momentum has really picked up in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's cool. I think a lot of people relate to that. I sort of do as well. Bizarrely, I was a bit of a joker when I was younger, but that was a mask in a way to protect me from getting things wrong, I suppose. Or I wanted to be part of what was going on, but I didn't want to get found out. So I just thought I'd not muck around, but I'd have a giggle. I'd try and make things fun for people. And I think that's, I think that's quite a lot of people's journey as teenagers. But yeah, you're certainly not the first guest to come on here that said exactly that. But what I think what's so exciting is that we evolve over time. That the experience we're having in any moment in our life is just that, and that it's not forever. It's just in that moment. That's what we're experiencing, and the exciting bit is the relationship with thought. That how that seeing that our experience is created moment to moment through thought, and there is and has never been any other way, takes a whole load of pressure off trying to sort out the jumble that we might be experiencing in any particular moment.
Yeah, and it can happen in an instant. And so without regret, I can look back on, wouldn't it have been nice if in my teens I'd seen through all of that thinking? It doesn't matter that I didn't. I'm cool where I am at. It's great. But I also recognize without regret, it was possible to see through it all then. Like there was a time in my journey where it looked like me transforming into outgoing and bubbly required time, work, effort, and understanding. It has required understanding, but that understanding actually is fairly simple, and that I don't need to listen and act on every thought that passes through my mind.
Yeah,
and that can be really quick.
Hugely, and it's the simplicity of it that tends to catch us out, because when we first start entertaining ideas that it might not be as hard as we're making it out, we look at it and go, no, it can't be that simple, and then we fall back. We can sort of start sliding back down the hill again. But the simplicity of it is the beauty of it. It also means that it's accessible to everybody all the time, no matter what's going on. And I just find that hugely rewarding to be able to share with people in as simpler way as I can possibly do, in whatever form that might take, knowing that might be all they need to see to go and have an amazing time with the rest of their lives.
And it's really practical, isn't it? It's really in the moment, and it's really, really practical. And conversations I've had at work, as a leader, with friends, as a coach, as a speaker, have shown me over and over and over again how practical this is. So this isn't sitting in a silent retreat, being deeply introspective and coming to a place of understanding and quietness. Although I'm not saying you can't get that through that route. I'm just saying that I've gone to that space in circumstances that, one might say it's impossible. So I worked in public sector prisons for 18 years. And you may have this experience from your experience in the army. Public sector prisons doesn't sound like an easy place to get quiet. But and to get to clarity in an instant. But I've had conversations in prison, experiences in prison, where in moments I've got to a space of clarity that has shown me it's possible anywhere. And that simplicity is properly real. I've tested its simplicity in a complex environment.
Yeah. And I think that's it's the fact that it's available everywhere, no matter the circumstances. It's sort of ignore whatever the circumstances are. Clarity is available, a clear mind, the ability to see things for what they are rather than what we imagine them to be, that sort of levels the whole playing field. So, you've experienced it in prison. I've experienced it in my time in the army, but before I had this view of it, I knew it was a possibility. I just thought it was just luck when it showed up, but that we could count on that luck, and we might put that luck down to the training that we had, or the bond that we had, or whatever it might be that gave us that special thing in the moment to be able to experience clarity when the world's on fire. But no, it's just something that's always there. And I think, the first time I really glimpsed that from a through principles perspective was, having just started at my training with One Thought, whatever that was, 7 or 8 years ago. My first weekend in London, as soon as I walked in and everybody heard that I was from Scotland, they said, "Oh, you must know such and such." And we went, after 6 people saying, "You must know this pair of people," right, I better go and find out who they are then. And so very quickly found them. We met up for coffee, and they asked, or I was talking about the fact that I felt that I was quite a calm person, and I put that down to the training that I'd had. And one of them said, do you really believe that? And that sort of got me thinking, well, that's the story I've been telling myself. But is it true? And I sort of challenged it in that moment. Sorry for the break in transmission. We lost Harriet for a little bit, but she does come back. But I thought I'd take this little break to thank you all very much for taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. I'm still slightly blown away by the fact that it's been 1, running for 18 months, 2, listened to nearly 6,000 times, and that it's reached 54 different countries. It still beggars belief, but there we go. Thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate it. I also thought I'd take this opportunity to ask for some feedback. I'm considering creating some bonus, shorter episodes revolved around your questions. So if there's any questions that have come to mind for you during your listening to this, or just general thoughts that you have, then feel free to email me. The email address is in the show notes, because I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about the podcast, but also if there's anything particular that you'd like me to cover and talk about, and I'll look to sort of create those bonus episodes. And lastly, I just wanted to say, if you've been enjoying the podcast and you'd like to help me create more going forwards, then I've recently added a support the show link, which will give you an opportunity to, buy me a brew, or put some money towards the creation and hosting of this. It's been something I've thoroughly enjoyed doing, and I will continue to do so. Thank you again for listening. It's hugely appreciated. And I look forward to hearing from you in due course. Anyway, back to Harriet. Well, we've just had an interesting technical glitch, which is now resolved. So Harriet's now back. We were talking about clarity being available in the moment, and I just wondered if anything had sprung to mind for you in the intervening period while we were trying to get ourselves reconnected.
So I was thinking of a story in prison, which I'll tell in a moment. But as we were talking, and I was loving that bit of conversation, and it was kind of funny to get glitched out with my Wi-Fi. But I have a real passion for it being practical. Like, we can sit there and go, yeah, clarity is available in any moment. Well, if, I know there have been times in my life where it has not looked like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that I was thinking, well, if this conversation is going to be of use to anyone, then what does that mean? Like, what does that look like in actual real life circumstances? Mm-hmm. And I remembered this little story from prison that that for me was a real moment of seeing this. So I was duty governor in a prison. That meant it was on a weekend. That meant I was in charge of the prison. Oh my God. So sorry.
All good. Very cheerful.
So I was duty governor in a prison. That meant I was in command of the prison for that day, and dealing with anything that came up. And as part of that, my role was to walk around the prison and sort of give some leadership presence and check up on how things were going. And it was on a weekend, and for whatever reason, I can't remember why, I was very grumpy that day and didn't want to be at work and had a lot of thinking going on. And I walked through one wing did my wing visit. And as I was walking out across the yard to the next wing, I encountered a young prisoner who was litter picking in that space. So he was trusted enough to kind of be in that space without supervision, litter picking. And as I walked past him, I said, "Good morning," as I would to anyone. And he said, "Good morning," back. But the way he said it made me stop in my tracks. And I said, "Wow, you sound cheerful." And I felt it in the moment, in the contrast with how grumpy I was. And he said, "Well, look, it's a beautiful day and I'm outside and the sun's shining." And in my head, I was thinking, I didn't say it, but in my head, I was thinking, "Yeah, but you're in prison." And although I didn't say it, he obviously felt the vibes off me. And he said, "Looks like you're more in prison than me today, miss." And he said, I might be in prison, but you can't take my mind. And I walked away, like, just like that story has stayed with me. And this was 10 years ago, probably. That story has stayed with me consistently as an example of how we really are experiencing our thinking of our circumstances, not our actual circumstances. So in that story, he's the one sentenced to a period of time in prison. I'm the one that's earning money from being in prison that day and going home to my loving family and my nice home afterwards. And he's the one that's experiencing freedom, not me.
Yeah. And it's an interesting one because there's the realization that Nelson Mandela had, that was along the same lines, that allowed him to sit comfortably in prison despite the hardships that he was experiencing.
Mm.
And then Derek Mason, who you'll know, he's been on here, and he found himself one day, as the door shut behind him in prison and the lock clicked over, feeling more free than he'd ever felt in his entire life, despite the fact he's in a tiny little room at that point. The difference between the external circumstances of what's going on and our relationship with them through our thinking in the moment is all there ever is. And that's, that is the simplicity of it all. When that kicks in for us, when we start to see it in that light, we then have the opportunity to see it in any moment. I think that's where, when the gear shifts for people, is when they know they can rely on that. And that even if they are caught up in their thinking, that's full of useful information for them to help them realize that's what's going on. And all of a sudden, as soon as you realized it, the light's back on and you're back in the moment, despite the fact it might not be a particularly brilliant one. And you can navigate it more comfortably. It's just lovely to see that when people start realizing that for themselves. And what an amazing moment to share with that chap in prison, who was absolutely feeling as free as a bird compared to you.
Yeah. And for me, what's grown from seeing that seeing that clarity is available to me in any moment, and I don't always access it in every moment. Let's be clear, I'm not perfect. There are times when I really buy into that person is being annoying. It's not my thinking. Like there are times when I buy into it, or that circumstance is difficult. But what I've seen, and maybe this is the jump for me in the last couple of years, is I spent a lot of time just looking for that clarity, and finding it was brilliant. But now, having found clarity, I feel like I'm in the game of looking for creativity and fun. And that's what I find from a space of clarity. So I find that in my parenting, in my marriage, with my friendships, and I big time find it in the leadership space around those problems that present themselves as looking real and urgent and stuck and problematic, that when I can find clarity, that's where the creativity comes. Mm-hmm. So again, to give a practical example, a recent example, last couple of weeks, found an area of uncontrolled spend at work, and this area of uncontrolled spend has been a problem for months, and I've been looking at trying to solve it for a few months, and have been stuck for solutions. But I have been looking at it from this is a problem, this is stuck. We've been trying to fix it for a long time. I don't know how to fix it, and from that space, me and the team have not had the creativity to fix it, and all of that looked real and true. So not to be dismissive of how that looked, that was good people collectively trying to solve a problem. My boss then, who I really respect and admire, applied a bit of heat to this problem and said, no, not good enough, this needs fixing. And I'm not saying I found the heat comfortable, but now the other side of it, I'm grateful for that heat, because what that heat forced me to do was think, right, come on, Harriet, you're not in clarity. Get into to create something different in this space. You need to get to clarity, and to that Einstein. I'm not good at quoting, but to paraphrase that Einstein quote, that you can't solve a problem from the level of thinking that's created the problem. I suddenly saw that I had to get into a different space to solve this problem. And so work with the team to get into a different space of clarity. And suddenly all sorts of ideas were pinging. And it was hard graft. It wasn't a magical solution.
Yeah.
But we could see, okay, actually, if we do X, Y, Z, we can apply some grip to this. And, a few weeks later, that the grip that we've applied has created an astonishing result. So it's really, really practical. It's not just, get to clarity and dance off into the sunshine. It's get to clarity and there meet creativity. And I'm talking about solving a problem at work, but that could be, creating the best birthday party ever. It could be something really fun. It's like, if you get to clarity, you can create the most incredible, brilliant things in the world.
Yeah. There's lots of C's going on in there, but I'm going to chuck in another one. The fastest route to clarity that I've come across so far is curiosity.
Yes.
If I'm feeling stuck, or I'm with someone that's stuck, and they look like they've been stuck with something for a while, getting curious about it, asking questions that are coming at a tangent, slightly fun, not necessarily meant to be the thing that solves anything, but just gets curious about it. Again, why does that look like that to you? what does that mean? That level of curiosity and engagement tends to raise the tempo of thinking slightly, and all of a sudden you're potentially off to the races, and clarity kicks in. That the listeners won't appreciate the whiteboard that's behind me over my shoulder that you probably can't read either, but it's got a collection of post-its on, because my eldest daughter's been looking at universities and trying to work out what to apply for and bits and pieces. And she had a sea of information, and we were trying to work out, okay, well, with that, what feels like the best thing? So I don't know. Okay, well, let's start playing with this. Let's see, pick out some subject areas for each university, like, what's the student life like? What's the course like? What's the location like? All that kind of stuff. Completely arbitrary. Doesn't mean anything. We'll just play and rank them 1 to 7, each with each thing, and see what comes up. And there's no real science behind it, but there is some, because it became playful. And she was like, I don't know about that one. Okay, well, higher or lower than this one. We just mucked about, and we ended up with something that felt like fairly close to her initial gut instinct, which is good to know, but also threw in some outliers of, well, I wasn't expecting that one to still be in there, actually. Okay, what's that about? And then that, again, more curiosity to try and drive out something that will be hopefully really helpful for her. Curiosity is such an amazing human trait, and we all have it. And it's interesting. It tends to come from a place of not knowing to start off with, but also not caring of not knowing. It's like, okay, this is new. What's that about? It's the sort of inner toddler in us. And when people are experiencing that, clarity is not normally far away, and yeah, things tend to snowball in a really cool way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Curiosity is well, that's a probably 6-session long podcast if you wanted it to be. Curiosity. What is there within curiosity? For me, there's a sort of humility that's necessary for curiosity. When I think, again, looking at it through a practical lens, in leadership space, staff engagement can look like forums and meetings with staff to ask them, tell me what the world looks like to you. But it's so important to be in that space with actual open-hearted curiosity. And for me, where I see that at work is just funny little conversations, walking past someone in the staff room who's reading a book and saying, what you eating? And then getting into a whole conversation about what they're reading, and then getting into a space where they tell me that thing that's bugging them, or that idea that they've had for ages, and no one seems to listen. And like, oh, well, hang on a minute, that's brilliant. That curiosity there's an aliveness to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's in the moment, which again, no wonder that curiosity is a portal through to clarity, because it is so in the moment. To be really openly curious, you have to be present in and open to now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a degree of vulnerability to it, and it's something that people really chime with because they know it's genuine. You can't fake it. You either are curious or you're just asking questions just for the sake of it. Which doesn't have the same energy to it. There's, it's the energy that people pick up on, and it's sort of infectious in a way. And it's it's the for me, it's the heart of coaching. My job isn't to have any clever solutions for anybody. It's to be as quiet as I possibly can be in my own mind, and be as curious about what's going on for them, because I know I don't know the answer. And being completely open and curious about things is what creates the space for them to see things more clearly, and to sort of shift gears in their own life in a way that neither of us knew was possible at the start of that conversation. That's the magic of it. And it just starts with little old curiosity.
And it's being curious, not doing curious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Curious, open, versus, oh, I'm going to do curious now. I'm going to ask some open-ended questions because that's what I learned on that course. It's actually just sitting in curiosity.
Yeah.
And for me, again, that curiosity for me feels very linked to playfulness. I really, these days, I'm a really playful person, and I really love that. Where I most enjoy being playful is where it looks like we shouldn't be playful. This is serious business.
Yeah.
I really, and I know sometimes it's disconcerting for people that I work with, that I really want to be playful at work because that I'm giving hours and hours and hours of my life to this space, and I love it, but it's got to be fun.
Yes. Yeah.
And that
there's
playfulness. Sorry,
no,
you go for it. I was going to say that playfulness. I've seen it works. That playfulness has unlocked so much for me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a trap that we think, and especially in certain professions, that this is a serious business and we need to be serious about it, and fun doesn't exist in that. I understand and respect that view, but I completely disagree with it. But there is space for playfulness in everything, because it's what makes us humans. It's what brings us alive. Seriousness doesn't necessarily shout and scream aliveness to us, but when we are most connected to who we are, most connected to being human beings in the rawest sense, then we're curious, fun-loving, loving, generally creatures that want to make the best of it, and that can still happen in the most serious of places.
And even in those really serious moments, the creativity that comes with maybe lightheartedness sometimes, which feels slightly different to me to playfulness, but lightheartedness, that lightness, it for me can be where the shift is.
Yeah.
And again, a whole other story. My mum passed away last year. She was ill for a few weeks. But actually, we lived those last few weeks with a lot of lightheartedness. And that, like I say, that's another conversation probably. But living in even that space with lightheartedness has again been really brilliant experience for me, and that's carried me through living without her.
Yeah.
Having experienced lightness with her, having experienced her lightness, in her pain and her physical pain and suffering, to experience her lightness has really supported me through living without her.
I'm sorry to hear that, but the interesting part in there is our potential expectations of how things are going to be versus the reality of them in the moment. The thought of losing loved ones is never something fun to play with as an idea. The reality of it is very different because we're in the moment. We're dealing with it in the moment with other people. And our imagined view of what's going to be there is the best we can come up with in at that moment in time, but it's also not complete. Whereas when we are living something real, it is there in all of its colors for us to experience wholeheartedly. And that is a very, very different experience to the ones that we imagine.
Yeah, that's where presence is beautiful, whatever the circumstances are. And the flavor of that presence is difficult. It's different according to the moment, but the being in presence is where the juice is.
Yeah. And and the uncomfortable thinking that hangs around the edges of that potentially consumes us, either thinking about the what ifs from the past of the, oh my goodness, how am I going to do whatever it is in the future? The pull of that, or the squeeze of that, depending on which way you want to which way it's appearing for you, is an invitation. It's just information to let us know that we aren't in this moment experiencing it for what it is, because that's the only thing that we've got any real handle on, any real agency with. Yeah.
And that's where that beautiful Sydney Banks quote is, which again I'll paraphrase: if the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, the world would be a different place.
Absolutely. I think, the thing I'm most grateful for with this work is knowing that every person that I have a conversation with that sees that that's true for them goes off into their world knowing that it's true for them and sharing it in whatever way that looks like with their people, whether that's work or family or friends or a combination of that. And therefore, there's a sort of ripple effect, because it is when we experience a fresh thought, insight, whatever you want to call it, that feels like we've known it ever, that bizarrely a smile normally comes on our face and we get a little chuckle, and we have a little chuckle about it. That's when something has taken root in someone that is going to change everything for them. It's the unintended, or not the unintended, the unimagined changes that happen in the world around them as a result of how they're now going to live their lives that fascinates me, and that I'm most grateful for, because that's a group of people I haven't got connection with, and that may not have connection with people that work in this sphere, and that's cool. Your man in prison who was enjoying his litter picking, I have a strong feeling that the people that lived around him enjoyed his company and his time and his presence in their world. They might not have been able to put words to it or really understood it, but just the way that he lived his life will undoubtedly have raised the experience of others around him.
Yeah. And there's an effortlessness to that, isn't there? That's beautiful.
Because it doesn't require anything. It just requires us living our best lives in the moment with the information and the experience, the circumstances that we're living amongst, and knowing we're doing the best we can with that. There is an effortlessness to that. The only thing that takes us away from that are the thoughts that create, there's more to do. I should be doing more here, or I wish I hadn't done this, or I wish I was doing that. that's the stuff that takes us away from being present. That's all it ever is.
Yeah,
Harriet, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. Despite our technical glitch. I know, you're a busy lady. You're only working with one client at a time from a coaching point of view. But if people wanted to get hold of you, how would they do that? And is there anything you'd like to share with the listeners before we wrap up?
Thank you. Yeah, this has been such a brilliant conversation. So I can be found on LinkedIn. Like you've said, I only ever coach one client at a time. A full-time job as a leader, but I really love that private coaching. It really nourishes me. It does brilliant things for my leadership, and I know from testimonials it does brilliant things for the those special clients that I spend time with, and also I speak. So if anyone's interested in that, find me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and taking the time out of a busy work schedule. It's lovely to see you, and thanks again for coming.
Thank you very much for having me. See you soon.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guests next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.